New York City, 1871. Gaslight flickered along the cobblestone streets like watchful eyes in the dark. Hooves clattered in the distance, echoing through the alleys and fading beneath the towering shadows of brownstones. The Civil War had left its scar, but for the upper echelons of New York society, a new era of grandeur had dawned. Behind the tall wrought-iron gates of Fifth Avenue mansions, fortunes were rebuilt, not with honor, but with opulence. Champagne flowed, orchestras played, and the air reeked of powder, perfume, and secrets. At the center of this world stood Evelyn Astoria Wentworth, the only daughter of Charles and Amelia Wentworth, names spoken with both admiration and quiet fear at every drawing room in Manhattan. Charles Wentworth, the ruthless magnate behind one of the city's largest railway empires, was a man who believed everything, including his daughter, could be controlled, bought, or broken. Amelia, his wife, was the embodiment of social grace, praised in gossip columns and invited to every elite soiree. But her eyes, cold, calculating, spoke of something darker beneath the corseted civility. Evelyn was a creature of contradiction. Just 19, she was already the obsession of painters, poets, and politicians' sons. Her beauty was otherworldly, porcelain skin, golden curls, and eyes the color of storm-tossed sea. Yet behind her delicate smile was a mind sharpened by years abroad. Paris had taught her poetry, Vienna gave her music, and London had given her silence. On the surface, Evelyn was a perfect debutante, but those who looked closely would notice she flinched at sudden sounds. She walked too softly for a girl raised in splendor, and she kept a journal, always locked, always hidden. On the night of October 25, 1871, the Wentworths hosted what would become their final grand ball. The chandeliers sparkled like constellations suspended from heaven. Silk gowns rustled, laughter masked tension. Outside, the wind howled through Central Park, tearing through the trees as if mourning something unseen. Evelyn never wanted to attend that night. She told her maid she had a headache, begged her mother to let her stay in her room, but appearances were everything. She descended the grand staircase in a silver dress threaded with pearls, a lamb walking willingly into the wolf's den. Dozens of guests recalled seeing her. She danced with Senator Grayson's son. She spoke briefly with a man in a dark military coat. His name no one could remember. She was last seen around 11, slipping out onto the snow-dusted balcony overlooking the park. And then she vanished. No one saw her leave. No carriage was called. Her room remained untouched. The dress she wore was never found. By morning, panic seized the mansion. Servants were interrogated, detectives summoned. The Wentworth name, so carefully polished, was suddenly drowning in rumors. Had she run away, been kidnapped, killed? The newspapers had a field day. Heiress vanishes from high society ball, no clues left behind. Mystery deepens in the case of Evelyn Wentworth. Scandal or sacrifice? What happened on the balcony? Charles Wentworth offered a $50,000 reward, an astronomical sum for any information leading to her return. It yielded nothing but frauds and fortune seekers. Her mother refused to leave the house. Curtains were drawn, mirrors covered. Evelyn's name was never spoken aloud again within those marble halls. But not everyone forgot. 6 weeks after her disappearance, a street urchin named Thomas claimed to have seen a girl with golden hair wandering barefoot through the alleys behind Mulberry Street. A priest in Hell's Kitchen swore a stranger confessed to hiding a sin beneath the floorboards. And on Christmas morning, an unsigned letter arrived at the Wentworth estate. It read only, "You silenced her, but she still speaks to the walls." The letter was burned before it could be examined. The official story grew cold. The police declared her likely deceased. A memorial was held, closed to the public, and just like that, Evelyn Wentworth became another ghost of Gilded Age gossip spoken of in whispers, if at all. But 20 years later, in 1891, during renovations at a now abandoned townhouse once owned by the Wentworth family, a wall was broken open, and behind the bricks lay a small velvet box. Inside was a locket. Inside the locket, a lock of golden hair, and beneath it, a note, in faded ink, written in Evelyn's unmistakable hand. "They think they buried me, but I am still here, watching, waiting, and the truth is clawing its way back." The velvet box was no bigger than a prayer book, its brass hinges corroded with age. When it was pried open that cold January morning in 1891, the silence in the room thickened. 3 workers stood frozen, their breath visible in the frigid air of the long-abandoned townhouse. None of them spoke. The locket shimmered faintly in the pale light, and the hair inside, impossibly well preserved, glowed like spun sunlight. The note, fragile as moth wings, was handed to the property owner, a Mr. Isaac Bellamy, who had acquired the townhouse at auction. When he read the words scrawled in faded ink, he reportedly turned pale and left the building without another word. He would later sell the property at a significant loss and never return. That note made its way, quietly, to the desk of one Detective Silas Greaves, a man with a reputation for digging into the rot beneath the golden surface of Manhattan. He had been a young officer in 1871, fresh to the force when Evelyn disappeared. It had haunted him for years, the girl with the sad eyes, the whispers among servants, the power her family wielded to end questions before they could be asked. Now, 2 decades later, the past was clawing its way back. Greaves, now grey-templed and slow of step, sat in his dark office that same night, staring at Evelyn's note. "They think they buried me," it read again, "but I am still here." He lit a cigar with shaking fingers. Had she survived? Had someone kept her locked away? Or had she somehow been watching all along? The first place he returned to was the Wentworth estate, though now it stood abandoned, its windows boarded, gardens overtaken by vines. The iron gates groaned as he pushed them open. Snow crunched under his boots as he made his way to the crumbling stone steps. For a moment he thought he saw a flicker of light in the upper window, but when he looked again there was nothing. Inside, dust coated every surface. Furniture lay beneath white sheets, like corpses dressed for burial. The grand staircase, once the site of Evelyn's last descent into society's spotlight, now creaked and groaned with age, and in the upstairs corridor he found the door to her bedroom. Still locked, still sealed. Greaves forced it open. The room was exactly as it had been left, ornate wallpaper peeling at the edges, a gold-handled brush still resting on the vanity, the faint smell of lavender lingering in the air. On the wall above her writing desk, he found something strange, a crack running from the ceiling to the floor, jagged like a lightning bolt. At its base, embedded into the wood, a fingernail, human, painted pale pink. He backed away. Had someone tried to scratch their way out, or in? In the weeks that followed, Greaves began retracing Evelyn's final days. He visited the socialites who were still alive, many too old to speak clearly, some too afraid. But one name kept resurfacing, Julian Datchery, a former suitor of Evelyn's. He was an artist, charming, penniless, and thoroughly disapproved of by Charles Wentworth. Rumors suggested the two had carried on a secret affair. Others whispered that Evelyn had planned to run away with him the night she vanished. Greaves tracked him to a crumbling townhouse in Greenwich Village. Julian was now nearly blind, his hands riddled with tremors. Yet when shown the locket, he gasped. "I gave that to her," he said, voice cracking. "The night before the ball. She told me she was afraid, that something was going to happen. Said her mother had discovered our letters and burned them. She begged me to take her away." "Did you?" Greaves asked, voice low. Julian only shook his head. "I waited for her, all night. At the pier, she never came." Greaves believed him. And yet Evelyn had written that she was still watching. From where? The answer may have come, not from Julian, but from an unlikely source. A former maid at the Wentworth house. Now an old woman, half mad and confined to a sanatorium, she rambled endlessly about the girl in the walls. "They locked her in," she whispered to Greaves through rotting teeth. "Said she'd disgraced the family, screamed for days. Then the house got quiet, too quiet. But at night, I still heard her scratching." "Where?" Greaves asked. "Where did they lock her?" The woman stared at him, wide-eyed. "Behind the mirrors." 2 days later, Greaves returned to the mansion. He walked the halls slowly, eyes scanning the walls for seams, the kind no carpenter would leave. In Evelyn's bedroom, he found it. A narrow mirror, 10 feet tall, was bolted into the wall, oddly placed, too tall, too flush. He pried at the edges. And something shifted. The mirror swung open like a door. Behind it, a passage, narrow, dust-choked, claustrophobic. The air was thick with mold. And something else, something sweet like decayed flowers. Greaves lit a lantern and stepped inside. The passage led to a hidden chamber, no larger than a closet. The walls were lined with old, tattered wallpaper. A cracked porcelain doll lay in the corner, and scrawled in faded blood or ink on the wooden boards were words, "I begged them to let me out. I didn't run. I was taken." I can still hear them laughing. In the center of the floor was a ring, a deep iron ring like the kind used to chain something or someone. Greaves stumbled back. Suddenly, the lantern sputtered, then died. And in that darkness, as his breathing quickened and the cold closed in, he heard something scrape behind him. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Not fast, not frantic, steady, intentional. He turned. Nothing. But the scent of lavender was strong now, overpowering, as if someone unseen stood inches from him. Then something cold brushed his cheek. He ran, burst from the passage, slammed the mirror shut, locked the door behind him, and didn't stop until he reached the gates, heart pounding like a war drum. He filed no report, said nothing to the papers. But 3 nights later, neighbors reported screams from the mansion. When police entered, the house was empty. Except for one thing. On the mirror's surface, in fogged breath, 5 words had appeared. "I never really left Silas." Detective Silas Greaves had faced murderers, arsonists, and madmen in his long career, but he had never known fear like this. The mirror. The message. "I never really left Silas." He had read the fogged words over and over, even after they faded. He tried to convince himself it was a trick, the result of age, moisture, or suggestion, but deep down something primal told him the truth. Evelyn Wentworth was never truly gone. That night he returned to his apartment in Lower Manhattan, locked the doors, drew the curtains, and poured a full glass of bourbon with a shaking hand. He didn't sleep, and when he finally closed his eyes just before dawn, he dreamt of long, suffocating corridors and a girl standing silently in the corner, her face turned away, her fingernails bleeding. 3 days later, Greaves met with a man who had been trying to reach him for weeks, Dr. Harold Litchfield, a professor of American folklore at Columbia University, had taken a particular interest in the Wentworth affair for years. He brought with him a collection of papers, letters, and unpublished records, documents that the Wentworth family had quietly paid to have removed from public view. "There's something older beneath all this," the professor said in a hushed tone, spreading the brittle papers across the table. "Something ritualistic." Greaves raised an eyebrow. "Ritualistic?" Dr. Litchfield nodded. "Did you know the original Wentworth estate was built atop land once used for old Dutch gatherings, secret symbolic rites? There are local legends, Silas, about girls who vanished and families who sacrificed blood to maintain power." Greaves leaned forward. "You think the Wentworths killed their own daughter for power?" "No," the professor whispered. "Worse, I think they offered her." Silas stared at him. Litchfield handed him a faded sketch. It depicted a girl bound, surrounded by figures in robes, under a symbol carved into the floor that resembled an eye surrounded by crows. Below it, scrawled in Latin, "Sanguis nobilis, vox perpetua." Noble blood, eternal voice. "Some said Evelyn had a gift," Litchfield continued. "Not just beauty or intelligence, but a kind of sight. She once told her French tutor that she heard voices in mirrors, that the walls breathed at night. Everyone thought it was trauma, madness. But what if she wasn't insane?" Greaves left the meeting disturbed, but unable to look away. Every step forward pulled him deeper, like walking into a swamp that slowly swallowed the past. And the deeper he went, the less the world around him made sense. He began to see her. Not clearly, but in the corner of his vision, in passing reflections. Once in the fogged glass of a streetcar window, her pale face appeared, eyes black as ink. When he blinked, it was gone. He found himself returning to the mansion night after night, drawn, as if she was calling him back. The mirror door refused to open again. He tried prying it, smashing it, even screaming at it, but nothing worked. Until the 7th night. That evening, at precisely 11:04 p.m., the hour Evelyn vanished in 1871, the mirror groaned softly, and then without force it creaked open. He stepped inside the passage once more. This time, the air felt alive. The scent of lavender was overwhelming, and a faint mechanical hum vibrated through the narrow walls. He followed it downward farther than before, farther than the blueprints of the house should allow. The stairs spiraled, stone replaced wood, then darkness. Not mere absence of light, but something denser, thicker. Greaves' lantern barely pierced it. And then he heard her voice. Not screaming, singing. Soft, lilting, echoing, as if underwater, a lullaby. One he recognized. It was the tune Amelia Wentworth used to hum at society events. Silas had heard it dozens of times, but now, sung with a ghostly resonance, it chilled him to the core. He followed it to a door, iron, rusted, sealed with chains. At the center, that same eye surrounded by crows. As he approached, the singing stopped. Then, a knock. From the other side, just one. Steady, calm. And then a voice. "You came back for me." Silas stumbled backward. "Evelyn?" Silence. Then, "They buried me in memory, but memory is not death." He ran. This time, all the way back to the professor. "I heard her," Greaves whispered, sweat soaking his collar. "She's still in there, still alive somehow, or something of her." Litchfield looked grave. "That voice you heard, it may not be Evelyn." "What do you mean?" The professor handed him one final letter, found in a locked drawer of Charles Wentworth's private archives. It was never sent. The ink was smudged, as if written in great haste. "She is not what she was. The ritual has changed her. God forgive me. I thought I was preserving the family, but I've unleashed something. She knows what I did. She sees me in mirrors. Amelia says she hears her breathing in her dreams. Evelyn is becoming something else. We were wrong, so wrong. CW." That night, Greaves awoke with blood on his hands, his own. Thin scratches lined his arms, as if from fingernails. His mirror was shattered, etched across its cracked surface in smeared red. "You're closer now." He knew then this was no longer about justice. It was a summoning, and it wasn't over. Because the very next morning on the other side of the city, in a luxury townhouse newly purchased by a wealthy banker and his young wife, something impossible occurred. Their daughter, just 6 years old, was found curled up inside her closet, muttering in a voice not her own. Eyes wide, voice deep. "She said her name is Evelyn," the girl whispered, "and she wants to come back." The child's voice wasn't hers. Her parents would swear to it later, eyes wide, hands trembling, that the moment their daughter uttered the name Evelyn, her entire body had stiffened. Her mouth moved, but her lips didn't shape the words. It was as though something ancient, buried beneath layers of time and silence, was speaking through her. They brought in doctors, then priests, then mediums. All failed. And every night, the little girl would sit by the mirror in her bedroom and whisper, "She's almost here." Detective Silas Greaves knew what he had to do. His reflection was no longer safe. It followed him, just slightly off, just slightly wrong. His mirror self didn't blink when he did. It smiled at odd moments. Sometimes it didn't appear at all. He moved through the city like a ghost. People noticed. They said he looked 10 years older, pale, sleepless, haunted. He barely ate, barely drank. All he did was dig. Old property records, private journals, police files that had been sealed and buried, and then he found it, one last piece of evidence, nearly rotted into dust. An unpublished coroner's note from November 1871, written by a Dr. Peter Ashcroft. It had been hidden, misfiled under a different name, scribbled in frantic penmanship. Body retrieved from East River, female, approx 19 years. Unidentifiable facial features due to decomposition, but clothing appears to match description of Miss Evelyn Wentworth. However, anomalies noted. Hands bound with crimson ribbon, tongue removed, chest cavity sewn shut with gold thread. Report suppressed at family's request. Cause of death officially listed as accidental drowning. But this was ritualistic. Silas felt the blood drain from his body. If that was Evelyn, then who or what had been whispering to him from behind the mirror. He returned to the mansion one final time. The front gate stood open. The air was still. There were no birds, no wind, no sound, just waiting. He passed through the rotting foyer, past the portraits that now seemed to watch him with unfamiliar intensity. The house had shifted. The wallpaper was darker, the ceilings higher. It was as though the building itself was changing to reflect the truth it had hidden for decades. At exactly 11:04 p.m., the mirror door opened. No hesitation, no resistance, as if it had been waiting for him. He descended the spiral steps again, past the point of logic, past the boundaries of what should exist. Stone gave way to something else, something older than stone. The walls pulsed like veins. At the bottom, the iron door was open. No chains, no symbols, just the smell, sweet and rancid, and the song, the lullaby. But this time, it wasn't Evelyn's voice. It was many voices singing in unison. Dozens, hundreds, all female, all trapped, all echoing through the hollow dark. He stepped into the chamber beyond, and what he saw shattered something in him. Bodies, not fresh, but preserved. Rows of women seated against the walls like porcelain dolls. Eyes open, mouths stitched, hair brushed and pinned. All of them dressed in period gowns, ball gowns from different eras, different centuries. In the center of the room stood a mirror, tall, black, glistening. But it was not made of glass. It looked like liquid frozen mid-wave, and from within faces pressed outward contorted in silent screams, reaching hands, hollowed eyes. One face, in particular, emerged from the swirling black, Evelyn, but twisted, mouth too wide, eyes too dark, skin too pale. She smiled. "You came too far, Silas." He tried to speak, tried to move, but his limbs were heavy, his chest tight. From behind him, a hand touched his shoulder. He turned and saw Amelia Wentworth. Not aged, not decayed, young, radiant, eyes like ice. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Where am I?" he choked. She tilted her head, where all good daughters go when they disobey. Then the mirror behind her rippled, opened, and something began to crawl through. Long limbs, a torso bent the wrong way, no face, just a mouth stretched wide and grinning. It screamed without sound. Greaves turned and ran, up the stairs, through the walls, into the night. The mansion behind him seemed to collapse inward with a great sighing moan. Then silence. The next day the Wentworth estate was gone. No ruins, no debris, just a flat patch of land where grass had withered. Silas Greaves was never seen again. But rumors began to swirl about a man, thin and wild-eyed, who appeared in reflective surfaces, windows, mirrors, even puddles, mouthing warnings in bloodied lips. And in upscale homes across New York, daughters, always daughters, began to disappear, one by one, always around the age of 19, always at 11:04 p.m. Sometimes their mirrors cracked first, sometimes they left behind whispers. One girl, before vanishing, left a final note beneath her pillow. "I dreamed of a girl with golden hair. She told me the walls remember. And now, so do I." There was no record of a Wentworth mansion ever having existed. At least, that's what the New City Archive said. Greaves' reports disappeared. The velvet box? Missing. The child who spoke Evelyn's name? Moved out of state. No forwarding address. Even the professor, Dr. Litchfield, was found dead. Heart failure, they claimed. His notes reduced to ash by an unexplained fire in his office. Only whispers remained. And mirrors. Especially mirrors. Weeks passed, then months. The city went on, as cities do. New buildings rose where old ones fell. Fifth Avenue gleamed with wealth again. But in certain homes, those with old money, long bloodlines, and heavy secrets, the servants spoke in hushed tones about the girl who knocks. Always at night, always when the room is quiet. 3 slow taps. And if you look in the mirror, sometimes, just sometimes, she's looking back. Some said Silas Greaves had gone mad. that his final writings were the ravings of a man who'd seen too much. But those who read the pages in secret, those brave or foolish enough, felt something stirring between the lines. Not just words, not just history, but a warning. His final letter, never mailed, was found tucked into the binding of an old case file long after his disappearance. It was addressed to no one. She was not the first, and she won't be the last. The mirrors are gateways. The bloodline feeds the breach. Evelyn was a sacrifice, but she didn't die. Not in the way we understand. She became the breach, became the echo between walls, a voice without flesh, feeding on memory, feeding on guilt. She is memory. She is punishment. And now, she is free. If you see her, don't look. If you hear her, don't answer. If she calls your name, run, or you'll be next. Just like me. Just like all of them. Present day 2025. A young woman named Claire Witherspoon stood in her grandmother's attic, dusting off boxes filled with letters and lace. Her family had lived in the same townhouse on East 75th Street for generations. That day she found an old mirror, tall and ornate, hidden beneath a sheet. The glass was flawless, too flawless. As she wiped it down, she caught something unusual. Not her own reflection, someone behind her. A girl, blonde hair, storm grey eyes, Victorian gown stained at the hem. She turned around. No one. When she looked back, the girl in the mirror had moved closer. Claire's hand trembled. She reached out, fingers inches from the glass, and then froze. A whisper, "You remember me, don't you?" Her breath caught in her throat. The whisper came again. Softer, sadder, hungrier. "You look just like her." The lights flickered. 3 soft knocks echoed from the mirror's frame. Claire stepped back, heart racing. Then her own reflection smiled. But she wasn't smiling, not anymore. In the days that followed, Claire's family said she'd changed, quieter, colder, always staring into mirrors, muttering to herself. When they finally removed the mirror from the house, Claire screamed so violently she had to be sedated. No one knew what she saw, what she heard, what was whispered to her in the dark. But her final journal entry, scrawled in uneven handwriting, would mirror the madness Silas once knew. She's not gone. She never was. She's in the glass. She's in the walls. She's in me. The heiress didn't vanish. She was just waiting. Evelyn Wentworth never left. She was never just a missing girl. She was the wound beneath silk gloves, the scream behind laughter, the ghost hiding in reflection. And now she is part of us all. Whenever you pass a mirror in the dark, if the air turns cold, if your reflection lingers just a second too long, don't ask, don't blink, and whatever you do, don't answer when she knocks.